Jay, the centerpiece of the president's economic or tax policy has been that everybody pays their fair share. Mitt Romney this morning was asked about his tax rate. He said that he pays closer to the 15% rate. What does the president think of that?
Well, I haven't discussed that with the president. I think you know from what the president has said and others in the administration that he believes very strongly that, or he agrees rather, with Warren Buffett that those who are making millions of dollars, millionaires and billionaires say, should not pay a lower effective tax rate than middle-class Americans. As Warren Buffett put it, he should not pay a much lower tax rate than his own administrative assistant, his own secretary. The president shares that belief, and I think that this only illuminates what he believes is an issue, which is that everybody who's working hard ought to pay their fair share, and that includes millionaires who might be paying an effective tax rate of 15% when folks making $50,000 or $75,000 or $100,000 a year are paying much more. He thinks we ought to fix that, and that is an element of the approach he takes in his economic proposals, as you know.
Mitt Romney's just following the law, isn't he?
Well, I'm not disagreeing with that. The president believes that we ought to change the law for that reason. His policies about the need for everybody to get a fair shot and to pay their fair share have been quite clear. We've had a lot of debates about it already with Congress, and I assume we'll have a debate about it this year once the Republicans choose their nominee. The president feels very strongly that everybody needs to pay their fair share and that everybody therefore gets a fair shot at the American dream. And that would apply to somebody paying 15%, an effective tax rate of 15% on millions of dollars of income.
We don't know exactly the rate that Mitt Romney is paying because he has not released his tax returns. He says that he said last night in the debate that he hadn't planned on releasing his tax records, but that most likely he's going to get asked to do it in April.
Well, what's the question? Sorry.
Yeah. Chomping at the bit.
I was anticipating. Go ahead.
Why should he have to release his tax records?
Well, look, it's not for us to call on someone to release his tax records, but it is an established tradition for presidential candidates to release their tax records. Then Senator Obama did release multiple years of his tax records, and obviously has released his tax records as tradition dictates since he's been president. And the president's not unique in that regard. President George W. Bush, President Clinton, nominees for each party for years and years and years. I think going back to 1976, this has been a very standard tradition. And obviously we think it's a good tradition, and that's why then Senator Obama released his tax records going back, I think, 6 or 7 years when he was a candidate for president in the 2008 election cycle. And I believe, I think it was a tradition that was initiated by then presidential candidate George Romney back in 1968, who released 12 years of tax records in '68, as I understand it.
Finally, can I just follow on Bill's question about...
Just happened to know that.
I just want to follow on Bill's question about Gingrich last night, saying that
presidential politics. Yeah.
More people have been put on food stamps by Barack Obama than any president in history. It is true that since Barack Obama has been president, it's gone up 45% the number of people on food stamps. So what is inaccurate about what Speaker Gingrich said?
Well, I answered this question already, Nora. I think everyone understands that this economy took a body blow in 2007, 2008, from which we are still recovering, and that resulted in an economy that was contracting, that was shrinking at an historic pace. An economy that was...
that the number of people has gone up more than any other president. You're just saying it's not the president's fault.
Well, I'm saying that it was a result of the worst recession since the Great Depression that was brought on by economic policies that certainly predate this president, and that this president has been working very hard with his team to try to fix, and working with Congress to try to fix and correct, so that we can grow as we have been growing on his watch, so that we can create private sector jobs as we have been doing, 3.2 million private sector jobs in the last many months. And that's the direction that we need to be going in, not the direction that we were headed into when he took office 3 years ago, almost to the day, when the economy was in free fall, when there was talk of another Great Depression, there was talk of unemployment as high as 25% potentially. Because of the actions that this president took, working with Congress, we averted that absolute calamity, but the impact of the recession has been severe, and it's been severe on the most vulnerable Americans, and it's been severe on middle-class Americans who have had to struggle to make ends meet as a result of it. And that's why this president's focus is so keenly on helping those Americans deal with this economy, emerge from the recession on sounder economic footing, and why he believes that the folks who benefited the most from the previous 10 years, who saw their share of the nation's wealth increase dramatically while middle-class Americans saw their income shrink or stagnate, that they need to pay their fair share, which goes back to the Buffett rule and the idea that someone making millions of dollars should not pay a lower effective tax rate than somebody making 50 grand or 75 grand.